The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Please grab a hot tea and coffee with us for this session. We are pleased to invite our guest speaker, Miss Anne. She's from the Orchid system and presenting the topic of showing us how to streamline the Sage 300 payment and receipt using the electronic funds transfer, commonly we call it EFT. Let's move to the slide we have here for today. This is the agenda as what we are going to cover. We want to make sure that the 300 user, you are able to increase your accuracy, the security, and the ability to audit. We want to make sure that if you are working remotely, you are also able to enjoy the digitization with the paperless office environment. We want to make sure that you are able to automate the emailing for remitting advice regardless where you are for today. The security features for the encryption of bank details is very important across all the country, whether you are in the local SME or with FSI, all these things. Whether or not it is a crucial features for us in the environment today. We are going to show you of different bank formats that is supported within the solution for we are going to showcase. The next slide we are going to share with you is also about today. What do we have on the Sage 300 user? You have told us of the numbers of check payments you are processing in each month within the Sage 300. A significant of the percentage finance team have shown with us. We want to make sure that your time is spent on the area that help you to influence and inform decisions across the business. Having said that, the numbers of the payment electronically that you are sending to vendors or to collect the customer receipt through a direct debit. This is to help you to enjoy and streamline the operation today. We move to the next slide. What we have to really showcase to you, how do we extend the capabilities of Sage 300? Take note, when your business grows, your needs will also be changing accordingly. This means that your ERP software will need to keep up. Right now, the Sage 300 will say that it's uniquely positioned to help your company grow and confidently add the required module whenever you need only. You do not need to scale up immediately, but just add all the functionality that your finance team, your business need, or even your operation needs right now. We are going to pivoting for today, the payment and banking solution, and where is our and will be showcased to you right now for today. The payment and banking. So over to you, and please show us the capabilities today.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for that introduction. My name's Anne from Orchid Systems, and today I'm going to run through EFT processing with you for your Sage 300. So the reason why you may need EFT processing is if you need to send payments electronically to vendors and employees, because we do support payroll in America as well, or do you need to collect receipts from your customers via a direct debit, or whereby you may still be writing checks to your customers, but you still electronically send an image of that check to the bank, and it's only presented, they can only present the check if they receive that image as well. So how confident are you that all your cash movements are secure and would stand up to an audit? And would you like to cut costs and improve efficiency through increased automation, enhanced auditability, and reducing exposure to fraud by moving away from paper checks or streamlining positive pay files while processing your payments? So EFT processing allows you to streamline your Sage 300 payments and receipts. So for your vendors, you are able to pay vendor invoices and also do customer refunds if you need to do that sort of processing. And for your receipts, You can create direct debit files for your bank. This is really good for all those recurring types of invoices like rent or subscription. The features of EFT include the increased accuracy, security, and auditability of both your payments and the banking details. It supports remote working and a paperless office, as you no longer need to print checks and circulate them around for signature. You can email the remittance advices or the remuneration statements to your vendors and customers. And we have lots of security features, like including the encryption of the bank account details, allowing only some AP vendor users to amend the bank account details and 2 levels of authority, so that one person enters the bank account details and the second person needs to approve them before they can be used in an EFT file. And without having to rekey or duplicate data entry both in your accounts payable and in the banking software, or accounts receivable and in your direct debit software, you've got faster processing, which leads to happier customers and vendors and employees. We support hundreds of bank formats around the world. We currently have over 900 formats in over 80 countries, and new ones are created on request. Implementing EFT causes many cost savings, and it means a quick return on investment, because you have savings on bank fees. You no longer have to purchase checks, stationery, reduce printing, handling, and postage, and it avoids duplicate data entry, saving you time. Oops, sorry. So these are some screenshots of our EFT processing, but rather than talking to these screenshots, what I'll do is demonstrate the software for you. So in Sage 300, we have EFT processing screens for the standard desktop screens, and we also have web screens for EFT processing. So depending whether you're using Sage 300 web screens or using Sage 300 desktop screens or both, your users can choose which screens to use for EFT processing. So I'm just going to hop across now and demonstrate EFT processing to you. So you should see my Sage 300 desktop, and you should see that I'm in the company Orchid Limited, and I have activated EFT processing. So the first thing to note that EFT processing is a module written in the Sage SDK. So it activates into your company database. So you activate it in as many companies as you need to. And all the data is stored in your Sage 300 company database, just like a Sage 300 core module. So when you're backing up your Sage 300 company database, at the same time you're backing up EFT. So it's, for all intents and purposes, it works like a core module for EFT, for Sage 300, just like accounts receivable, accounts payable, and so on. So first I'm going to have a look at accounts payable and doing our vendor payments. So the steps for EFT processing are, you would first go into your accounts payable and you would do your payment batch list and enter your payment batches, or you'd be using Sage's create payment batch functionality, which creates a payment batch for those invoices that you select via the selection criteria. And you would have a payment batch of the payments that you want to, that you're going to make now. And once this batch is posted, you are then able to send those details to the bank. So I've just working on a batch that I have already posted. Once you have a posted AP payment batch, you would go to EFT processing, and in the EFT transactions, you would create an EFT file. So EFT processing allows you to select whether you're creating an AP payment batch to pay your vendors, or if you're doing an AR receipt batch to create a direct debit file, or you're doing an AR refund batch if you do need to refund customers via EFT. So I'm just going to do an AP payment batch, and I'm going to select batch number 1. And you can see when I entered the batch number 1, and I could have used the finder to find the entries, the batch number, the bank automatically, the format for the bank, the Singapore DBS format, has defaulted. So I will come and show you the setup that I needed to do this, but you know, for the bank associated with batch number 1, I have set up Singapore DBS UFF as the format. So once you've selected the batch that you want to do, you would just go ahead and create. And it would create the EFT file for all the entries in the batch in the format required by the Singapore DBS Bank. So when I click create, I'm now getting a warning message saying that my batch number 1 has previously been exported. And do I want to recreate this file? And this is because, you know, it's demonstration purposes, and you know, I've exported this batch many times before. But this can be controlled by security, and only admin type users can go ahead and say yes to recreate a file. You could have your normal AP users are not allowed to re-export a file, and this is one of the security measures that we have in place. But I'll just go ahead and say yes to recreate this file, and you can see it's created me a file with the 2 entries formatted accordingly, and I have a link here to the file. So in this case, I've configured EFT to create the file, to give it this particular file name in this particular directory, and I can hyperlink to that file and see you know, see what the details are and that it's formatted correctly. Depending on your bank, if your bank allows SFTP, so that's the secure FTP process, when you go create EFT file, you can configure EFT processing so that the file is directly SFTP'd to the bank. So you don't, you know, you don't have, or nobody has access to that file at all. And then after creating the EFT file, you would then upload it to the bank if you're using the bank software to do your uploads, or if you're using SFTP, that file would be already sent through to the bank, and then you can go ahead and print your remittance advices. So the remittance advices are like your, they're customizable, so just like your invoices that you have with Sage 300. The reports are customizable using Crystal, so you can tailor them, or your business partner can help you tailor them to have your details on. And if you say that you want to use the vendor or customer's print destination, which is you set up on the EFT vendor or customer, whether you print the remittance advice or whether you email the remittance advice. And for those ones that need to be emailed, you would have a message ID that you would send to the vendor with the remittance advice attached. So I would choose my EFT payment remittance advice, and I would go ahead and print. And this would either print or email depending on my vendor's preference in this case, because I'm doing an AP payment batch. And that's really the process for EFT processing for your AP vendor payments. You post, you enter and post your payment batch, and then you come to EFT processing, create the file, and then print the remittance advice to email it off. Now, the setup that I need behind this is in the EFT setup menu. So what you need to do in the EFT setup menu, what you need to do is configure your vendors. So for your EFT vendors, for all your vendors that you're paying via EFT, you would fill in the relevant banking details. And what we are able to do is to turn on more or less fields on your EFT vendor based on the EFT file format that you're doing. So if in this case, I'm doing an HSBC ISO 20022, which is a big XML file, and they need to know who's going to pay the charges, whether it's our charges or the beneficiary's charges, paying the charges, or they're shared. So we are able to configure the screens for your vendors so that you have the relevant information captured. And for the bank account details like the account number, the bank code, and the SWIFT code, we are also able to not encrypt, but to mask. So if I was not an administrator user and I didn't have the authority to change the bank account details or see the bank account details, all I would see here is a whole row of asterisks and the last 4 digits. So I can just check that we're dealing with the correct account here. And any changes done here is logged or audited, date and time, who created or amended which field from what to what. And we also have a status on the vendor's record, their vendor's EFT record. So if, depending on your security clearance, as a user, as an AP user, I could set this clearance that when Anne changes some details or enters some details, the status will always be entered. And then Steve perhaps can't change any details, but Steve can approve and change the status from entered to active, in which case you can have a separation of duties between who enters and who approves the vendor's account details. And the EFT processing would not create an EFT file for a vendor unless the status of the bank account details was active. So you would, and this can be imported in the normal Sage way. You can build a template and import the EFT details that you need to do. So I won't go ahead and save any of those changes. And you also need to configure your EFT bank. So for the bank that you're doing your payments from, you would configure what the default EFT file type for this bank is. So from here, you can see if I was to search all my bank accounts, that's not by description, but by EFT file type, contains Singapore. So as you can see, we've got many different bank accounts for the Singapore banks, for Malaysia as well. We've got a whole lot of different bank accounts, as well as other countries in Asia. And as I mentioned previously, we have over 900 formats at this stage in over 80 countries. And we create new formats, as new or amended formats as needed, free of charge for customers who are current on their software assurance. So for this bank, you would configure where you want the file to be stored, what the file type is, and any bank-specific information. Because apart from in this case, but apart from the BIC, SWIFT code, and account number, we also need to know the company ID. And if you're doing direct debits from the same bank, you may have different details for that particular type of EFT file. And I mentioned that you can SFTP the file straight away as it's being created. If that is the case, then you need to define what type of security the SFTP file has, whether it's password or key file, or it's both. The download option is if you're using our web screens and you don't have access to a local drive to create the EFT file. or you might have two-factor authentication on your SFTP file. So if I did choose that, then I would need to fill in the SFTP details together with the key file and the user ID and user password. So even if your bank doesn't support SFTP, you could still have your own internal SFTP site. And the minute the file is created, it is created on that SFTP site. And then a second group of users who don't have access to Sage 300 and only have access to the SFTP site, they could upload the file to the bank. So again, you can have another separation of duty between the EFT files, the users that create them and the users that upload them. So that's really the configuration you need apart from your email message templates. I mentioned that if whenever you amend a vendor's or a customer's bank account details, the audit log is maintained. So this shows you, so if I look for my vendor, or you can, the same thing for employees, it logs, I'll just go back. I'll just start that again. So it logs date and time. In this case, it was employees' bank account details. The account number field was changed by the user of admin from this to this. And this is how you can see. So this is when I turned encryption on. So this is how you can see from now on in all the logs, only the last 4 digits, or any reports, only the last 4 digits would be seen of the bank account details and the account number, and only users with the ability to see the full account number, they'd be able to change it or enter it on the EFT vendor's record. But we're also auditing every time an EFT file is created. So it tells us what type of file was created, what batch number it was, what the bank was. And if you double click on it, and this is the payment batch that I've just done now, if you double click on it, it shows you the 2 payments that were involved and the relevant bank account details at that point in time and their payment amounts. So all the data is stored forever, what was included in that particular file. So if you are using EFT processing for direct debits, so the process is very similar. You would go into accounts receivable and you would enter your AR receipts, and those are the receipts that you're going to ask the bank to direct debit. But if in EFT processing, in a similar way to accounts payable, having the ability to do a system-generated payment batch run, we do have the ability to do an AR direct debit batch run. So by selection code that you set up in the setup options, you can tell EFT processing to create an AR receipt for your CCB bank, and then you can select all different types of transactions. So which invoices do you want to be creating a receipt for automatically? So on the criteria tab, you can select by customer name range, by invoice date range or due date range or balance. You can also do things like invoice terms or customer terms. So in my case, any invoice that I've created with an invoice terms code of EFT direct debit, those are the ones that I can automatically create a receipt and apply it to those invoices, and it will create me an AR receipt batch. So I don't need to go and create all those receipts manually ahead of time. But you can use any of these fields to indicate which customers or invoices that you need to select, by customer optional field or invoice optional field, however you want to be able to identify which open invoices will be included in your receipt application, and whether or not you want to do a single receipt for your national accounts if you're using national accounts, or whether you want one receipt per invoice, or whether you want one receipt applied to multiple invoice per customer. So you can specify the way the receipts are to be created. You can choose which invoices you want, which documents you want to include. So if there's any open credit notes, do you want to apply them to the invoice before doing the receipt, or is it just always going to be a receipt applied directly to the invoice? And you can exclude certain customers and certain documents if you know that you don't want to include them. And when you go ahead and create, it would go through your AR, open invoices and create a receipt batch unposted, which you could then check and go ahead and post that batch. And then you would be in a position to go to your create EFT file and select the AR receipt batch in the same way as we did for our vendors. But in this case, the default for the bank that I've chosen happens to be a Canadian format, but I could change that if my data was set up okay, and go ahead and do a file for the Singapore DBS if I know my data is okay. And that's really the EFT process on AR receipts as well. So, and similarly for AR refunds, you would have entered your refund batch, posted it, and then you would go ahead and select the AR refunds, and you could go ahead and refund those customers based on the refunds that you have, all via EFT. So I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint. So I've gone through the demonstration of the product. So just a little bit about Orchid systems. We have a number of Sage 300 modules that we've created over the years. We have notes and document management link, which allow you to create context-sensitive notes and attach documents to any master file or any transaction. We have some tools which allow you to do customizations and automations, Extender, which allows you to do alerting and logging, as well as customizations in terms of customizing Sage 300 processes, either by adding new fields or new processes and automations that you may need, and works very well with Process Scheduler, which allows you to schedule certain tasks, repetitive tasks like posting of batches or day ends, or data integrity checks on a schedule as opposed to always during office hours, which helps you, save time and make sure these tasks get run. And in our streamlining financial processes, this is where EFT processing falls in, which I've just run through with you. But we also inter-entity transactions, which allows you to automate loan account entries between multiple companies in a group, and that works very well in conjunction with inter-entity trade, which allows you to buy and sell goods or services between companies in a group. So OE to PO or AR to AP. So you only have to enter one side of the transaction, and the other side gets automated for you. And we also have some tools which are very useful in budgeting and reporting, and management of your reports. Info Explorer is our BI drag and drop tool, which allows you to, in a cube style viewer, analyze your Sage 300 data. And you can use it also for budgeting in conjunction with optional tables to store a budget at a lower level than the GL, because Sage 300 allows you to budget at a GL level, but not really at a customer item level or customer vendor or vendor level, and so on. And we also have Report Runner, which allows you to create menus of crystal reports and your FR financial reports, so that you can have menus of your own or custom crystal reports and financial reports. And using Process Scheduler, those could then be scheduled. So you could have your age trial balance automatically run, vendors and customers on a Monday and sent to the relevant people. And we've got some tools in the operations and inventory management area to allow you to track your return material authorizations and store fault code tracking stages and statuses of your returns, rather than just only having a credit note for those items that are returned, and bin tracking, which allows you to subdivide an IC location into multiple bins, and then it tracks movements of stock in and out of those bins, rather than just relying on a location level. And Freight Smart Link is a link to freight carriers, but that really works in the Australia, New Zealand, UK, and South African regions only. So Orchid, at this stage, we have over 7,000 Sage 300 sites around the world in over 80 countries, and we've been writing add-on modules for Sage 300 for a long time now. And we're supported throughout the world by over 450 Sage business partners. And this is why we're able to have such a large customer base, because we're not dealing, we work through your current Sage 300 business partner in supporting you locally. So, we provide the technology and our expertise in EFT processing in this case, but it's still your business partner who supports you locally with your day-to-day workings. We're based in Sydney, Australia, and have received many awards from Sage for our modules over the time. This next point, we have 20 integrated Sage add-ons, is probably the most important point on this slide for you. When I showed you EFT processing, as you saw, all the screens looked and felt exactly like Sage 300 because we use the Sage 300 SDK, the software development kit, to create all our modules. So from your point of view, it's not like you're having to learn a new interface or have your security defined in a different way or have to back up another database. It's all 100% integrated in your Sage 300 company, and for all intents and purposes works exactly like a core module from Sage. And that's really what I had to discuss with you. So I'm just going to move on to the Q&A slide, and I think Lynn is going to take control back as she has some questions already to start. And for those of you who've got additional questions for us, if you can pop them in the question or chat box, because you're all in listen-only mode.
Thanks, and I'm going to take over the sharing by reading out the first question from the floor. And are you able to see my slides here?
I'm seeing your slides. I'm not seeing the questions.
How about now?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. No, sorry, I can't. Yep.
Okay. So the first question from the floor is, the challenges are to streamline the manual process because some of the Sage 300 users, they have to key in both AP and payment plus bank with the payment details for checking. So how is EFT coming here to resolve this kind of issue?
So I think you would have seen this in the demonstration I did. So you do need to key in or use the AP payment system generator run to create your payments, or you've got to key them in. But once the payment is posted, then you just use EFT processing to generate a file from that payment batch. So you do not need to rekey all those details with all the problems with rekeying details, the chances of making mistakes. You don't need, in rekeying them into the bank. So you create your payments, post the batch, and then just use EFT processing and create the EFT file off the batch.
Okay, that can be resolved by having the EFT in place. Let's move to the
Yes.
next slide. The next question from the floor. The challenge also with the customer, with our Streamline user, they are calling out, we would like to integrate our AP and AR processes, especially AP, and if possible AR as well with our banking portal. Will this integration enable us to easily upload the payment information from Sage to the bank portal? Currently, the Streamline user, they are managing this manually. And what's your thought?
Yes. So when EFT processing creates the file, then that gets uploaded into the bank. So it depends on if the bank supports SFTP, then the minute the file is created, it will be SFTP directly to the bank. So you don't need to manually upload for the payment information up to the bank using the bank's import feature. But in either case, if the bank doesn't support SFTP, you still don't need to rekey the details. You just need to import the bank file into the bank software.
Okay. Just a moment. The next question, so what are the various format and requirement for each AR and AP here?
So depending on the bank that you're working with, they will have specific fields that are required for the AP payments or the AR direct debits. And these specifications, you need to get the specification from the bank, and then we would match them off onto what we have already. So as you can see, as you saw, we have many formats already around Asia and around the world. So more than likely, we already have the format, and all we would tell you that this particular format, like the Singapore DBS UFF, it is configured already. So all you need to do is select that as your file type, and it will prompt you for the fields that they need for that particular file type. If we haven't already done it, if we get a new spec, we would include that at no charge for customers.
Will do. Let's move to the next question. Particularly the customer Streamline user like to know, how can I safely process my EFT payment and how will it be sent to my bank? Particularly this is for 600 customer based in Singapore. They are using DBS Bank.
So I did my demonstration using a DBS format. So I know DBS has a number of formats depending what type of payments you're doing and depending what account you have with DBS. But based on the specification that you get from them, you would just, what EFT does is formats the payment based, or your payment batch based on the format specification that we included. So after posting your batch, and you'd have all the controls on posting the batch that you need, then you'd just create EFT file. And I think DBS does support SFTP, so then it would just be SFTP directly to the bank. Oh, and then I did show you after creating the EFT file, you would then send the remittance advice by clicking on the print remittance advice. And emailing the supplier with your custom report showing which invoices you are paying.
So it can be resolved by having the EFT in place for Singapore Bank Singapore Bank DBS.
Correct.
Okay, let's move to the next question. Next question about fraud prevention. How do we migrating the risk of fraud in AR and AP processes? This is very essential for us as well. That will be including the ICE internal control, segregation of the duties, the regular audits by the customer, and even employee training. They want to recognize and prevent the fraud activities. How are we able to, yeah.
There's a number of things we have in EFT processing. The first one is the separation of duties of the approval of the bank account details for your customers and vendors. The second thing is auditing, who changes what when, so that you know, and that audit report can be inquired on or run as often as needed. We would recommend that you always have a separate person who's posting the AP payment batch, and then the person creating the EFT file. So that you know, you've got control totals from each side. You know, so my batch total equaled $100,000. The EFT file was $100,000, which is shown in the audit trail. And then the third person who loads it up into the bank, you know, has to show $100,000 there as well. And in terms of fraudulent activity on the manipulation of the banking account details, you know, that's also protected by the separation of duties on approving EFT bank account details, but also implementing an SFTP site and protecting that file. If you can't SFTP direct to the bank, which is the safest, then having an internal SFTP site is more secure than just creating the file on a file share.
Okay, let's move to the next question. How can we make sure that our connection into our bank system for AR and AP are safe here?
So that's probably more to do with you know, the controls that the bank gives you on connecting through to your banking system, and many of them have really strict controls and secure PIN numbers and two-factor authentication, and so on. So I think that's more to do with your banking software being safe. From a point of view of the generation of the EFT file, you would use all the security that both Sage and Orchid have in, you know, who can create and post AP payment batches, who can create, you know, generate the EFT file, and who has access to upload that to the bank.
Okay, let's move to the next question. Now, what are the difficulties on advised foreign vendor for the payment slip or even to the remittance as compared to local vendors?
So for foreign vendors, so normally to make an EFT payment for foreign vendors, then your bank account or your bank needs to support the ability to do you know, foreign account payments, and all banks do that. It just, you need to have the correct account with your bank. So you can still have EFT for your foreign payments. You would still upload an EFT file to the bank to transact those payments, and you would still be emailing the remittance advice from Sage 300 in the same way as you do to your local vendors. So all the controls you have on your local vendors, you can have for your foreign vendors, as long as your bank does support international payments or international wire payments, depending on the bank.
Okay. The next question is regarding the global operations. Now managing the AR and AP process across the multiple justification with various regulation, the currency, and even the tax requirement that really adds up to be very complex. Understanding and compliance with international laws and regulations are necessary for a smooth operation. So how is this coming in place for the EFT here?
Well, we have EFT formats over 900 in over 80 countries. So using Orchid's EFT processing, you could have the same AR direct debit and AP vendor payment process in all the in all the countries. So you've got one auditable EFT process in all your countries, you know, irrespective of the currency or the type of payments that you're doing from that particular company, because, you know, as long as the bank in that country supports the kind of payments that you're trying to make, you would have one process across all your companies for your vendor payments and your accounts receivable direct debits if you have them. We can't really help with tax requirements, but in terms of the audit process needed for AP payments, let's just look at that one. You know, all the audit controls we have on bank account details, encrypting the bank account details, auditing who changes what, when, where, and then the security we have around the EFT files with SFTP, as well as the additional controls that you're not having to enter the payments and then rekey all those details into the bank software, gives you, you know, a tighter control on smooth operations on your vendor payments and your direct debits.
Okay. Next question is, that's very interesting, it's very happening in our Asia customers, user. How to manage? Some of them are payment by the check. Some of them are payment by transfer through a bank, a TT or bank transfer. So how is EFT coming here to manage?
Yeah, so we would normally recommend that you use the accounts payable system generated run and have either an optional field on the vendor or a vendor type which indicates whether you pay by check or pay by bank transfer, by you know, EFT transfer. So when you create the batches using the system generated run, you would end up with two batches, one for all your checks and one for all your EFT payments. And then you would you know, only select the EFT payments to be that batch to be sent through to the bank. And then EFT has a validation. You can turn on the validation that, you know, if all your payments in a batch, if one of the vendors is not set up correctly or doesn't have the correct bank account details in terms of the rules from the bank, then we can do some validations and not create the EFT batch because the data is not complete. But your checks you would have in the normal way, you would print the checks and get those checks signed.
Okay. The next question is the online payment for our AP.
Online payments for AP. So I think that's referring to, you know, instead of going on to the bank software and rekeying everything, what you would do is upload the bank file or SFTP the bank file for your AP. So your payments, you don't need to rekey, you just reflect them, post the batch in accounts payable, and then upload or SFTP that file straight away for your payments.
Okay. The next question that's coming, I will just read out here. Is EFT features supported for the client, for the customer that are using Sage 300 2019? The answer is yes, we are able to support this Oracle EFT here. The next question, yes, and
yes, we do have for 2019. However, we only include new formats free of charge for supported versions of Sage 300, which is if the format's already there, that's fine. But if you need a new format, it's not free of charge if you're on an unsupported version of Sage 300. At the moment, the supported versions are 2022, 2023, and 2024.
So they need to upgrade if they want a new format.
If they want a new format, yeah.
Yeah, which is not covered in the current template that we have.
Correct.
Okay, so is this EFT features cover the billing?
Covered the billing?
Yes.
I'm not sure I understand that one, Lynn.
This is For the billing, it's not within the AP here, so we are not. We can't cover it on the billing side. Yeah.
Does it cover the invoice creation?
Yes.
No, it doesn't cover invoice creation. No.
Okay. The next question is, how does EFT handle multi-currency transactions?
So normally, it depends on the EFT bank, but normally the currency, the EFT file format from your bank, but normally the currency is on the transaction level. And so whatever currency the payment was made in, it takes that payment amount and that currency, and that's what goes into the bank. Some EFT files do not allow different currencies on the different transactions. The currency is in the header, in which case then you need to create your AP payment batch all in one currency. And it's the source amount that we put out into the EFT file by default, but we can put in the home currency amount if requested.
So the next question from the floor, is this a new module interface with another bank registered? To the question from the floor is, this is not a new module, but EFT electronic fund transfer is a add-on solution that is offered by our ISV vendor, Orchid, that is able to drive the EFT solution here. The next question is from the same person. What are the receipt batch can be processed after the posting? Is receipt batch can only be processed after the posting or not?
There is a control setting if you do want to allow batches to be processed before posting. And some people do ask that because they want to see the exchange rate that the bank uses and edit that in the batch and post. It's not our recommended way of processing because there's less controls, and you're leaving a batch open until such time as you amend it and then post. So there could be a discrepancy with what goes through to the bank and what's on the AP posting. But we do have the ability to turn that on. So what some customers do, they do most of their processing for single currency batches without that option turned on, but then one administrator user is allowed to create a, switch that switch so that they do allow unposted batches, post it through, create it through to the bank, and then come back and post the batch when completed. So it is possible, yes.
Okay, so the next question from the same audience is, what if the payment deduction is failed?
If there's bank charges, does that mean?
The receipt batch, what if they post and the the payment deduction is failed from here? Can they reverse or not?
Yes, they can reverse. So once if the bank says either a payment or a direct debit failed, then they would go to accounts payable or accounts receivable and reverse that transaction.
Okay. The next question is the current interface between the Sage 300, the bank link, and the banks works the same way or not?
Sorry, can you just read that one again?
Is the current interface between the Sage 300 and the bank link work in the same way, or is a different approach?
I think it's the same way, if I understand that that question correctly.
This is how the demo works just now as well. Okay, we are coming to the end of the question here, but just want to make sure that if you guys have any question from the floor, please raise it here. We wanted to share with you the Sage 300 users. Right now, it's not about just saving the time. We want to share with the user. It's about freeing up your resources and reclaiming what truly matters, and having the space to really use your expertise on what only you could do. With the more time that we can automate and streamline the operation, you can get into the flow of more meaningful strategy work. Just imagine you can build a stronger, more productive finance function, but also investing in your own professional development, making an even great impact in not just in your own organization, but in your industry, and what matters is in your career too. With our sharing today for EFT solutions with Orchid, you can optimize and streamline the operation for Sage 300, the payment and the receipt. Now, take note, overall, the true value lies in transforming not only your work, but your life. We want to make sure that with Sage 300, it's time to seize your opportunities with the technology and the automation that provide within your both hands, and reclaim the time and energy you can to do to optimize your work life. Now, the action for you, if you consider this solution EFT, you really you want to try out the demo, you want to see how it works to help to streamline the operation, you can email to us. We are ready for a demo or a discussion. Some customer right now raising to us, can we have a trial run or not? We can arrange a demo. Just email to us. We will connect you and the partner and the Orchid team directly so that you can see how it works and to transform the operation and streamline your workflow. Now this is the time to say we are all ready to move to the next step. We want to make sure that for today's session, this is something for you as a key takeaway. We are ready to send you the presentation and the recording after the session for today. Now, if you have any other question that you want to ask, email to us, and we will send you the PowerPoint recording after the session tomorrow. And in the meanwhile, thank you for joining us for today. And we're really pleased to have Anne and Steve to come to share with us on the EFT solution. Thank you so much for spending the time. I will look forward to see you in the next round session. Thanks, Anne, and thanks everybody for attending the webinar today.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this session, and thanks for organizing, Lynn.
No problem. We'll speak to you guys, everyone, soon. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.